Good morning, everyone. Here, this is Joe Manna with Infusionsoft. What we're going to be talking about today on the Mastermind webinar is how to develop the content strategy for your small business. So, if you can hear me, just go ahead and let me know in the questions box on GoToMeeting here, and let me know if you can hear me. And also, just making sure you can see the screen. Great feedback. I always love having a live audience here. So perfect. Love it. So I'm just going to give it a few more minutes here for more people to get on because we know it takes a second to log on here with GoToMeeting. So I'm just going to hang out here for a few minutes and we're going to get started right away. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Mastermind webinar here. My name is Joe Manna, and what we're going to discuss is content strategy for your small business. So, what we're going to basically explain is, as you're doing your 2014 planning, we're going to go a little bit more into how content can help you achieve your business goals. But throughout this webinar here, I'll be kind of bouncing between a few different topics as it pertains to content. So let's get started here. So let me just make sure I can click through my slides. All right. So on the mastermind here, what we want to do is explain that you can also have access to on-demand webinars for mastering Infusionsoft. So I actually looked at this again last night, and there's a lot of really good courses in the virtual academy. And on the virtual academy, you can actually learn a lot more about using Infusionsoft and how to actually build out more campaigns, set up referral programs, set up follow-up sequences, everything that you've really wanted to do that you haven't done yet. You can actually do that with the Virtual Academy, and it's available on demand. The next thing I want to let you know about is that Icon is coming up here very soon in April, but you don't want to delay because this is going to be a sold-out event where we have world-class keynotes, including Seth Godin, Simon Sinek, J.J. Ramberg, Peter Shankman, and Clayton Mask. And there's going to be dozens and dozens of actual really, really good speakers that you want to attend, and you want to answer all your questions, and you want to network with thousands of other like-minded entrepreneurs. Again, the urgency on this is that you want to register right away to get the best possible price. And just so you know, there's actually a few discount codes floating around on Twitter, and also ICCs. They actually also have a few discount codes as well. So check around, and you can actually save a few bucks too in the process. But this is going to be an amazing event, and I can't wait to attend and be a part of all that with you. Additionally, what you also want to do now that you're on the Mastermind webinar is actually contribute and vote ideas up as to what topics we all discuss. So what you want to do is just go to mastermindwebinars.uservoice.com, and you can actually vote on other ideas that people have submitted, and also submit a few ideas yourself. So we're going to actually go through this here pretty quick today. I have a number of slides here and a lot of interesting data to share with you. So what you want to do is make sure that you are, you can take notes, you can do whatever you need, but definitely we're going to go pretty fast paced because I want to make sure that we have time for questions and all that afterward. So basically, feel free to include the hashtag ISMastermind, and feel free to mention at Infusionsoft at any point during the webinar. So I also have a shameless bribe here for you. So the more tips and takeaways that you share, I will randomly select one person on Twitter to receive the latest book from Gary Vaynerchuk titled Jab, 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 Right Hook. And the reason why I'm giving that away is because his book contains numerous case studies, and he's explaining why you need to take your content strategy seriously and how the game is changing and how you can actually really, really, really grow your business by being generous and helpful with your content. So just so you know, there's someone will win today if you're attending the webinar and you're tweeting on Twitter. We'll actually select one random person to receive a free copy of his book. So let's get started here. So when we talk about content, there's a lot of topics I can dive into here. I could literally speak all day. So what we're going to do is be very selective with what we're going to discuss. So first, I want to lay out the differences between content strategy and content marketing. Then I want to dive a little bit more deep into why you need to actually take content strategy seriously. Then we're going to simplify all the different content formats down to 4 simple ones for you. I'm going to explain how you actually conduct customer and market research into what content you create. We're going to touch on to lifecycle marketing and how content relates to that. I'm going to share a few examples, and we'll have some time for Q&A. So basically, just make sure that you have Twitter up, because I also have it up here on my screen on another computer where I'm looking at the mentions here at Infusionsoft and also the IS Mastermind hashtag. So when we say content strategy, what we want to do is really put a definition to that. And there's a really good accepted definition from Christina Halverson, where she basically simplifies content strategy into the planning of the creation, publication, and governance of usable content. And I think that's a very fitting definition, because it is all about planning, and planning your content strategy is vital, so you can actually know and have confidence into what you're creating and why, and also who it's for. Now, the word governance is a little scary here, because I know that sounds a lot like, government and rules and regulation. But really what governance is all about is maintaining a discipline of what content you create and why. So for instance, when you have some crazy idea as to, hey, let's go ahead and share this out there with the world, you can actually have the discipline to say, you know what, that's probably not fitting for our audience, so let's hold off on it. At the same time, it's also the discipline to say, hey, you know what? We actually have on our hands here a lot of talent and resources that we should share with the community. So basically, content strategy gives you the discipline to actually execute, and it gives you greater confidence in doing that. So on the topic of execution here, content marketing is the marketing tactics used to create and distribute relevant content. And this is actually kind of where I see the line being drawn between content strategy and content marketing, where content strategy is about the planning and content marketing is about the execution. But it's important. You can't have one without the other. You could do all the planning and the strategy you want, but at the end of the day, it's about execution. And this is where being really innovative and being ahead of the curve pays off. So here's a quick breakdown as to how I see the world between content strategy and content marketing. Generally speaking, content strategy is really focused on audiences and their needs. And once you've established a strategy, it doesn't change too much because you're committed to it. And once you have a well-rounded strategy that is timeless and it can last for many years, or at least many months, then you can actually then focus more on the content marketing of it, and you don't have to keep switching tactics all the time. But again, content strategy is really focused on the why and the who, whereas content marketing is really focused on the what, where, and how. And when you consider this here for 2014, what I want you to do is take stock of what you're doing in your business, right? A lot of you are becoming really, really good at building out campaigns and email campaigns and lead generation and landing pages. And as you're doing that, it's important to broaden your scope a little bit more, to go up another level in terms of what exactly are you creating, who's it for, and why. And content strategy gives you that why. And that's what I want to focus on for the rest of the webinar here, is a lot more about the strategy, a lot more about the planning. And perhaps in a future webinar, we can actually dive a little bit more into the actual marketing of it. But again, where I draw the line in the sand here, it is the difference between planning out your content and actually creating the content. We know it takes a lot of time. I know that you only have 24 hours in a day, just like I only have 24 hours in a day. So what you want to do is just focus on exactly what is most critical, most valuable to the business, and most valuable to your audiences, as you head into 2014. If you're working with an outside agency or an outside consultancy, that's perfect, but it's also important that you need to give them the guidance and the focus as to what is important to you and your business. So let's dive a little bit deeper here. So the problem, as I see it, with today's focus on content marketing is that there's not such a strong focus on a strategy. And we could see in this Google Trends graph that for a while, content marketing and strategy were going hand in hand with each other. And it made sense, right? It was still relatively new. We can see just since 2006, it really started hitting the radar of many businesses online. And it's been increasing, and that's awesome. But the strategy behind the marketing is so valuable. And you can see just for 2013, there is a distant gap. Now, I'm also realizing that a lot of people kind of couch content marketing into content strategy, and it's one and the same. It's a term we use interchangeably, but the point here is that you can't have the marketing without focusing on the strategy. And what happens when you only focus on the marketing is that you will run out. At a certain point, you will run out of the fuel that's needed. You will run out of the ideas, and then you'll kind of be in this stuck. You'll be stuck where you're looking to create content and you just feel exhausted, and you actually don't know exactly what you want to create and why. And then you start to question the platforms, you start to question the audiences, and generally you start to question the effectiveness. Because traditionally, what has worked is, well, you already have an email list, you already have customers that come to you from referrals or otherwise. So let's just keep sticking with that. And maybe this newer version of attracting customers and serving them isn't exactly working. So basically, the point here is you got to have both, right? You got to have marketing, you got to have the strategy around it. So with that in mind, I want to kind of unpack. I'll try to run through this really quickly here, but why content strategy is important, and additionally, why is it important to your business? Because I feel like a lot of businesses out there that I've talked to about content strategy, they're skeptical. They don't believe that inbound content creation or taking the time away from developing really good landing pages uh, is valuable to the business. And there are a few interesting trends to keep in mind. And since you're using Infusionsoft, most of you at least, as well as a lot of you are already online as businesses, you need to view yourselves as innovators, right? For many of you, using Infusionsoft is just a no-brainer. But for millions of businesses out there, they haven't yet discovered the power of it. So you already are, most of you, fairly early adopters to the whole game. And it's important to not lose sight of that. The game is changing, and it's changing quickly when it comes to attracting new consumers, building trust, and actually delivering value to people. The game is changing, and it's changing quick, and it's up to you to be ahead of that curve. So to explain what that curve really is, I kind of have a few stats to share here. So in broadcast media, and mind you, in full disclosure, a lot of these stats are involving millennials, or people, below the age of 24 here. And the reason why that's important is that is tomorrow's consumer. Millennials, as much as we get criticized for our entitlement, millennials actually have a lot of purchasing power. Currently today, they represent $1.2 billion of purchasing power in the market. And also, as time goes on, they will be tomorrow's consumers. And there is a lot of interesting change that's going on in that age demographic. So one of the trends that's going on is TV viewing habits. And I'm bucketing this into what I call broadcast media. And what you can see is that just over the past few years, we went from having an average of 26 hours per week of broadcast consumption to 23. And it's not that TV programming has decreased. We now have hundreds of channels on cable. We all have satellite or cable or high definition network over the air TV. We all have fantastic shows that we love. Breaking Bad, among others, was a huge cult classic among hundreds of other TV shows that this demographic loves. But even despite that, television consumption has decreased. And I don't want to just isolate this to 18 to 24-year-olds. I want you to think about yourself, right? Think about your use of your mobile phone. probably as you sit here today, your mobile phone is within 4 feet of you, right? Most people, and actually 95% of millennials, have their phone within reach of them at all times. And the other 5%, it's probably sitting on a charger because they're using it too much. The other thing to think about is the use of DVRs or TiVos out there. You know, what TiVos let you do, obviously it lets you record television programming, but ask any TiVo user and they love the ability to skip commercials. And there's a reason for that. Obviously TV commercials take away from their time of consuming the programming that's on TV. There's also a very popular plugin that's available for both Firefox and Chrome and possibly other browsers that lets you block advertisements across the web. That plugin is incredibly popular among web users, and basically what it does is it removes advertisements off the screen as you're browsing the web. Well, the use and the consumption of that plugin is at an all-time high, and there's a reason for that. So think about what that reason is, right? The other question here is the fact that your buying habits have also changed. When you are actually considering buying a pair of shoes, how often is it that you're going to your local shoe store or you're going to Zappos because you identify with the company online, and yeah, they might not have the best, cheapest price, but you are loyal to them. And what's interesting is that the loyalty to brands among consumers is increasing. Also, the reality is that the market is changing in terms of global competition. A lot of people are comparing your services and your products to other products and services that could be had for cheaper elsewhere. And what you want to think about is, even if you're not a commodity, or if you don't view your products as a commodity, you are being commoditized because people are comparing you based on price, based on reviews, based on the reputation that you have. And it is increasingly important to develop relationships with consumers and with the prospects of your audience here. Additionally, look at your inbox. If you get an email from someone that you don't know and they're looking to advertise to you, what does that feeling feel like? It feels annoying, it's intrusive, and in some cases you get so angry, you report them as spam, or you write a blog post about it, or you complain to the company online. So overall, consumers are becoming less tolerant of interruption and much more connected to the brands that they actually love. So you need to really think about this about, when it comes to your business, even if you're not targeting millennials, because everyone is using social media, everyone has a phone at their disposal, and everyone is a much more informed consumer. And also, the last tidbit here, because I know I'll probably get a question on it. What about B2B? B2B, in 99% of the time, you are dealing with a human on the other end. There's decision makers, and they basically all have the same needs like you or I have. They don't like interruption, and they also want to know that the service that they are purchasing from you is relevant to them, and it's something that's trusted, and they like to feel good with the purchase that they bought. So just realize that some consumer trends are changing here when it comes to discovering content and actually making buying decisions, because all of this is related here, right? People want to feel informed when they come to you for information and for the products that they desire. But it doesn't just end there. Let me see here. Facebook, right? So Facebook is like the holy grail here of marketing, because over 1 billion people are on it all around the world, and it's basically unstoppable for now. But times are changing. So what's interesting is that in the youngest segment of Facebook users, which was once the number one segment, they are now decreasing their consumption and their use of Facebook. And you know where they're going? They're getting off of Facebook and they're going to the likes of Instagram. Yes, it's a Facebook property, but they're using the likes of Instagram, they're using the likes of Snapchat or WhatsApp or other text messaging apps, and they're getting away from the interruption-based marketing that's going on that network. There's other reasons too, but uh, in a survey, right, among this demographic, they were asked, have you clicked onto a sponsored story or a sponsored post? Over 63% of millennials on Facebook said that they never clicked on a sponsored story, nor did they have a desire to. So it's important that what you want to do is make sure that you are ahead of the curve and you're not publishing simply sponsored content, but you're publishing content that is organic and relevant to their needs and really, really connected to their interests. So basically, what I'm saying here is Facebook is no longer the number one place to go to for tomorrow's consumers. It's becoming much more diversified. There's new applications and there's new engagements that people are flocking to maintain their social connections with people. And it's not even just with people, because there's many brands who are just killing it on Instagram. And it's important that you think about other networks besides Facebook and besides Twitter that engages consumers in a relevant way. So I'm not saying Facebook is dead. I think it has many more years to go. It has a lot of life left in it, and Facebook is changing the tools to improve the targeting and content delivery options of people. But you can't ignore the fact that tomorrow's consumers are diversifying the tools and platforms that they use to stay connected with people. There was a recent study that I just got a hold of last night from Ignite Social Media, which is showing that engagement on Facebook is decreasing. And by engagement, we'll keep that broad, right? Clicks, likes, comments. And there could be numerous factors and numerous reasons for that. Facebook is always changing the algorithm as to what appears in the newsfeed. But overall, within the newsfeed, it is becoming extremely competitive to be seen above the fold. And yes, Facebook is a scrolling experience, so people could still see you if you're at the bottom of the newsfeed. But the reality is that there's more competitors, there's more content being published. And the content medium is changing. It's no longer just text. If you want text, then Twitter is your platform of choice. If you want to include videos or you want to include photos to help tell your story, then Facebook is definitely the right platform to help make that happen. In reality, Facebook is increasing the amount and the density of sponsored content within the newsfeed. It's actually a fact that Facebook actually has about 36, almost 40% of all their ad revenue coming from mobile. So there's a reality here that a lot of people are consuming Facebook in mobile versus the desktop experience. So just like on their phone, they're not sitting there for hours at a time. They might spend hours in a day looking at their phone in 3 or 4 minute increments all throughout the day, when they're on break at work, when they're at lunch, after work, when they first wake up. So what you want to do is realize that engagement is decreasing because everyone is targeting them in the newsfeed. And basically, content has a shorter lifespan. And the reality is, no matter how great your business is, you are still competing against their friends and family. You are still competing against new babies on Facebook, funny videos. You're competing against engagements. You're competing against a lot of activity that other people care about. And the reality is, right now, people don't necessarily care that much for business-oriented content on Facebook. And basically, the foundational concept here is that we all have the same amount of time, right? No one's going to be able to add another 10 hours of Facebook consumption to get through all the noise. They'll just not respond to you, or they'll unlike the page, or they'll hide the stories, and they will craft the feed around their friends and family. So the point here in this chart is to show that organic reach and organic engagement is decreasing significantly, just even since this month on Facebook. And mind you, it is a smaller sample. I think the number of brands here was probably about 200 brands that they surveyed. But they showed that the average decrease in engagement was minus 35%. and minus 44% reach, which is important. There's a reason for that. If everyone's all publishing self-serving stories and self-serving content, then it won't work for them, right? Because people don't care. And when they don't care, then you basically lose sight of that. So just keep that in mind. I don't think this is like a death knell for Facebook, but it's something to consider where you put your time and energy into when telling your story online. Another interesting factor here, compiled from the Edelman Trust Barometer, is the overall trust that people have in brands and the overall trust people have in social media. When we say, that it's valuable for other people to tell your story, and it's much more powerful when other people are telling your brand story, even if it's not totally accurate to your messaging and platform. If they can say, hey, you know what? I love Infusionsoft. You just got to get them because they're going to help you grow your business. That is much more powerful than us saying it. But there's actually an increase here. Between 2011 and 2012, brands are also increasing trust. But I think that will result in a diminishing return when brands continue to talk about themselves and they're not engaging their community along the way. But overall, a lot of people consider multiple online sources. There was another study that says 3 out of 4 millennials will trust a stranger over their friends and family's recommendations on a piece of when buying a product. So said differently, basically it means that people are trusting the information that's held in online reviews versus the recommendations of their family. So it's important that trust is a valuable component here to actually succeed and generate leads and generate sales for your business. So it is a household name and a household brand that people recommend you. Also, I just looked at a few funny tweets last night here, basically demonstrating that the medium has changed. No longer is it that the only way to drive consumers to sales, are direct mail postcards or lengthy emails or very long sales form pages. The medium is changing. So here's a few funny tweets, right? Where Charmin, again, they're selling toilet paper. They are actually still engaging with their audience and they're telling their story in a fun, lighthearted way, right? So I think they're funny no matter what. But that's the thing, is that you need to be top of mind and you need to develop trust and affinity with your online audience. And I think one of the best ways to do it is to just lighten up a bit, not take yourself so seriously, and start talking on their terms, on their medium. Taco Bell's another here. So instead of Taco Bell saying, hey, it's time for fourth meal at 11 o'clock at night, what they're doing is re-syndicating, or in this case, retweeting other people who are telling their message out there. So at night, when Aaron Carter here wants to get nachos and cheese at late night, and he's mentioning Taco Bell, well, they're going to share that with the rest of their audience because it's a recommendation from their community. Also, at the same time, is that people are sharing videos and people are sharing out the brand's videos, and that is so much more powerful than the brand telling it themselves. And also think about this, right? So Taco Bell is a huge brand. They have a legal team, they have a regulatory team, they probably have an army of copywriters, but they're deciding that their community is more important than their own message. So my point here is to read between the lines. Look at what's going on. The message here is changing to where it's no longer a very formalized, stiff corporate speak. It is very casual and it is very focused on the end user and their needs and their interests. Another example is Danica Patrick. I like her on Facebook. She shared the General Motors update when they changed their CEOs. Now, normally there's a press release attached to this, but you can see that GM had a very short message announcing Mary Barra, who's the new CEO of GM. And at the same time, Danica Patrick, she's sharing content that her audience cares about. Is, she's giving acknowledgement to the race car that she uses, that it's a Chevy, and the team that she's connected with, which is in NASCAR. And she's basically sharing it because it's relevant. If she drives a Chevy, it is relevant to Chevy owners that General Motors selected a new CEO, and especially at that, a female CEO. So basically, she shared that out. Very simple update. It doesn't need a whole lot of changing of the content. And syndication, or rather curation, is just as important as creation. So this is just one example of how the game's changing. And your consumers depend on you to share information that's relevant to the industry. Absolutely, in the world of NASCAR, in the world of Chevrolet, having a new CEO is relevant, and she's a great spokesperson to help spread that message out there. Whether or not they have a formal arrangement to announce it. And it's something that's gotten, thousands of likes and hundreds of comments and multiple reshares. And in the name of the game, it is about expanding your reach. So again, here's another example of the medium changing on Facebook to make formalized corporate announcements, is that it is getting more casual. It is getting the message is becoming shorter. So every word counts even that much more. And it's not like they're only using Facebook or they're only using Twitter, right? At the end of the message, you're still pointing you to the blog post or the press release explaining more. But basically, from my standpoint, if I just read this alone, I am getting value because I know that, okay, GM has a new CEO. Cool. All right, move on. Well, what other funny cat videos are being shared on Facebook, right? So it's something just to keep in mind, when you talk about your business and you maintain your brand's presence on there, that you are talking in their language, in their terms of your audience. Another quick example, I can't really mention Chevy without mentioning Ford. So Ford unveiled the new, I believe, 2014 or 2015 Mustang that is coming out here. And literally, instead of having a video or instead of having a lengthy press release or a major micro site, that where people could see all the photos and the videos, they basically took 3 pictures. You could see when they pulled off the wrap around the car and showed it off at the Detroit Auto Show, or basically within I guess another auto event. They just put 3 photos together, and they basically published it. And it was one sentence here where they announced the new car. And you could see that they got 7,000 likes, hundreds of comments, and almost 1,000 shares. And what that does, that helps position Ford to be a much more relevant topic. It's a conversation starter amongst friends, and their friends can probably comment on it as well. So again, they're telling a story in 3 photos here, and they're also telling it in a brief, simple way. Another example from us on Instagram, we actually held the Infusionsoft Implementation Accelerator upstairs in our building. And what it is that we're basically showing off the awesomeness of our customers and our dedication to helping small businesses succeed. And you can see that in this photo that we published last week, that over 25 people have liked the photo. And all we're doing is just showcasing a picture of what people are doing inside our building. And it's important because we are top of mind with our audience on Instagram, and it helps them think about, oh yeah, I didn't know Infusionsoft has events. And they're able to visit the website, they can comment on there, and you can actually see someone is asking us to come to Florida and do the implementation accelerator there. So this is actually really valuable because it shows the real world demand and real world interest in products and services, and it's on the medium that they choose, not necessarily the medium we choose. So I think at this point, again, I want to emphasize here that it's not about necessarily using photos. That's just one of the tactics here. The point here is that you need to make your message brief, to the point, and valuable to the people reading it. I've seen so many, and I'm sure you have too. All you have to do is go to Facebook and look at your screen. There are so many updates that brands share that are long, not that well targeted or segmented, and they're not actually giving value. The point here is to give value and help your audience actually succeed. So moving on here, I just want to emphasize again the value here of taking your content seriously, knowing about your target audience, and really driving home the fact that you need to adapt to the platforms that they are using. So speaking of adapting to the platform they are using, we're going to talk a little bit about content formats. So I know that there's probably, I don't know, 100, 200 different ways to share your story and your message out there. I'm going to boil it down to four pieces or four types of content. So there's long form, right? Which is, it takes a lot of effort to create, and it provides generally a higher return or higher value. You're probably already doing this through the use of webinars, through videos, through ebooks, through white papers, all that stuff. Then there's short form, meaning it's not long, right? It takes you can create it much quicker and you can be much more agile about it. So that could be an example where you're using blog posts or you're recording a short video. Another one, which is again the point that I've emphasized here, is micro. Right? There's micro form of content where you are sharing a very short update or very short message, and you're connecting with your audience in a status update or a tweet, or a Facebook photo. It's basically really, really short, but it provides lots of value to your audience. And lastly, the content form here that I think is super important is actually amplifying and sharing out what your audience thinks. So what your audience thinks about your company, about your products, about the industry, taking that content on and answering their questions is so valuable because it helps people realize that you listen and you care and you serve your actual community. So breaking it out a bit further here, here's a few examples of pieces of content that fit into these four categories. Now, the whole thing here is I don't want to dive too deep into the practicality of each of these pieces of content, but realize that you have lots of options. And I don't think you should go after every single one. It is very challenging. It is a red sea of productivity if you try to dominate every single platform and every type of content. However, when you know your audience and you know the content that you want to create, you know why you want to share it, then you can actually go after the platforms and the media that actually make sense to you and your business. But again, there's much more content out there besides what I shared on the screen. I'm just sharing this here for context, so you're able to kind of boil these four categories into a few different segments. So, okay, I opened this up in the beginning here that content strategy is about knowing your customers and knowing the why behind it. So it's important that you spend a lot of time conducting customer and market research. And when I say customer market research, I don't mean necessarily firing up a Google search and finding out what are people between 35 and 44 doing, right? I mean actually getting on the phone and talking with your customers and your prospects. And actually, because you already have a list. Most of you probably at this point already have a list of customers. You already have a list of prospects. You probably also have a social audience. So simply asking questions, really expecting nothing in return, just sort of being humble about it and say, hey, we've got a few questions for you. I just want to understand a little bit more about you. They will actually be very forthcoming and very, very helpful to you understanding their needs. So literally, there's so much value in talking to your customers and prospects. I actually conducted this recently. We've done a research cycle in the past couple months where I actually was researching the content needs for our business. And it was so valuable when I just went on Twitter and I was like, hey, I'm looking to talk to anyone who operates a small business or they consider themselves an entrepreneur. Just shoot me a tweet and and we'll talk. And then from there, I got their phone number and I basically conducted a phone interview where I could ask them questions, ask them to clarify things a bit further. And that was it. The value for me was the honest research and the honest statements from other people. And what was great is that I was able to dive a little bit deeper into their overall interests, into their business and into their life. And again, we're selling to a sort of a B2B, type of consumer where they are running a business. But even if you're in the B2C game, this is just as valuable. Just imagine how powerful it would be if a favorite product that you love, like Apple, gave you a call to discuss how you use their phone and what other needs that you do in life. We also do this a lot with our software, where we actually conduct really formalized and much more aggressive panels to discover information and validate it. But the point of this is that when you're actually going through and you're talking with your target audience and your target customers, really, you are then now forming a hypothesis. Who are they, right? And what do they want? So what you do is that you perhaps start out with a survey. Then you kind of move on into like live interviews, and you basically form an opinion, and then you go out and validate it. You send something out to them again and say, hey, I think I heard you tell me all this. Does this sound right? Does something here seem off? And what's amazing is that you'll get really, really good feedback as to saying, hey, you know what? That's exactly right. That really describes me. Or, hey, you know what? I agree with everything but this item. And the value of that is that, one, you are calibrating your own antenna, your own, I'm trying to think of the word here. Basically, you're calibrating your own radar for knowing exactly what your customers and prospects need. And then finally, because you don't want to end up in analysis paralysis here, you at a certain point you have enough data and enough information to make a well-educated judgment as to how you execute towards that. So, for instance, we started out with maybe a couple dozen individual surveys and responses from people. And then we basically boiled that down to 3 or 4 different customer types. And then from there, we explored into what content could we create that addresses their needs. And we actually began to prioritize that and setting off in the direction of creating content for their needs. One of them, just as a byproduct here, is that a lot of our consumers want to know how to be discovered online, whether that means SEO or local SEO. So what we did, we actually already have in the works, and we already have it mostly done. We actually conducted a lot of research and we developed content for that. So when you're actually able to develop content based on the needs of your audience, you are going to be much more confident into the effectiveness and the reach of that content when you actually take the energy to create it. So the surveys and the information that you're interviewing your audience with, you basically need to collect all this information. And there's multiple ways to do it. It could be literally direct. You ask them, what exactly do they want, either from you or from your industry? What do they want, right? But you also need to understand, the indirect information, right? You need to form an opinion as to what their pains are, and also what matters to them, right? Perhaps our users, what matters to them more so than other people is the time they spend on their business. We know that, again, you and I have the same 24 hours and you're running a full scale business, either yourself or a few people around you. And time is so much more valuable to you than, say, someone with a 9 to 5. And they just, they at the end of work, they go home and they can disconnect. We know that you as entrepreneurs, you are working late into the night. And that is relevant. And that can actually help you form your opinions and help you create better performing content that addresses their needs. And then lastly, you also need to understand what influences their decisions, right? It's important to know exactly what content helps people make a decision to buy your products or services. Sometimes it's the content that you create. Other times it's not. There's other factors. We know that there's other people with that influence their opinions. There's they go to different thought leaders. They go to broadcast media. They might look at online review sites. You name it. There's probably multiple factors that influence someone's buying decision here, and that's a totally different discussion. But the point is that you want to be able to form a hypothesis on this so you can develop a customer persona. Because when you have focus and you have clarity, you will actually be able to have the confidence that's needed so you can create the content that actually performs for your business. But the name of the game here is being specific. It is not specific to say 18 to 24-year-old males. That is way too broad. Unless you're selling toothpaste or you're selling deodorant, that is not your your target demographic. What is basically 18 to 24-year-old males who are into muscle cars who also play Xbox. Well, if that's the case, then I should be pretty receptive to Gran Turismo or Forza Motorsports, which are both computer game. I'm sorry, Xbox games that are all about the driving experience. So when you can really dial down exactly who your customer personas are, and you know their needs, and you know what content that would actually serve them, then you can execute much easier. So here's an example. So here's this guy. I love him, by the way. His name is Greg Taylor. His story is that he basically left the uh, corporate game to start his own gig, and basically he does web development. And basically, we were able to ascertain more information about what he does in his business. He's very much an early adopter. He uses WordPress. He uses web development tools. You can see his tool set is pretty diverse. And basically, I literally listened word for word into everything he said, and I wrote it down, and looked at it later. And this is just one slide among many that you want to kind of create. But when you label your customer personas, you can really craft the content around their needs. So I love Greg's. He's awesome. His business is growing, and he's thrilled with it. But it's interesting the pains that he demonstrates or has under the surface, and you might not know the pains until you literally get on the phone with them and you just talk it out and you say, "Well, tell me more about that. What got you into this? When you were considering starting your own business, what tools or resources did you use before before today?" And it's very interesting. So when you understand your customers and you know their stories, it's so powerful. Another example, I spoke to a customer named Carmen. She's out of New York. She was doing work at 10 p.m. at night, which is pretty late, I think. And I thought I was going to get her voicemail when I called her. But literally, she answered the phone and she's just working on her business, doing emails. Well, that is an indirect form of evidence that shows that she's working on her business late at night, and she cares a lot about it. So when you're forming all this, it's really good to develop literally customer profiles and gather data and evidence to form your opinions. And this is basically one of the slides here that captures the opinions of what our discussion was like. So you should be able to do this, right? So look at your customers, focus on 3 or 4 different segments, maybe one. It's all right to have one. That's perfect, actually. But really understand who they are, what they want, what does life look like, and what is the relevance to your business. And what's important to in this slide here, it's very, just in the bottom left, I think he would be a good fit for Infusionsoft because he does have a need to qualify his leads better, and he does have an interest in scaling the business, right? So when you're looking at your customer targets or your prospect targets, you want to understand, what is the relevance to your business. So it's important to put that into context because I talked to a dozen others that were amazing people and amazing entrepreneurs, but they were not ready for Infusionsoft, nor would they be a good fit for quite some time. So it's important that you have focus and you have the discipline to go after exactly who your customer targets are. So next topic here, we're rounding this out here pretty soon, is life cycle marketing. So a lot of you know what life cycle marketing is, right? So life cycle marketing is the 7 stages to where people learn about your business, sign up for information about it, then you're educating them, and at a certain point they engage into a transaction, then you're fulfilling on that transaction, and eventually you keep remarketing or in this case upselling your customers on more services and more products, and eventually you'll get more referrals and the cycle repeats. So with this in mind, a lot of you are taking advantage of lifecycle marketing. You've probably already built it. As you know, Infusionsoft is one of the tools that makes this much easier to do because you're only using one tool and not several. But what I'm going to do is basically explain that what you want to do is think about all these different stages and the types of content you're creating, and who is it for. So it's my belief that content strategy marries the customer personas and lifecycle marketing together. So you are able to create content that wows people, that impresses them, and also drives business value. But what we need to keep in mind is, there's a time and place to do marketing offers and sales offers. And that's what lifecycle marketing gives you. It gives you the opportunity at a later point to make those sales offers, so it can be really, really effective for you and your business. So here's a basic example that I want you to think about. If you could plot your target users in one column, right, and then plot the lifecycle marketing stages in like another row, what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to create content, hopefully filling up an entire grid. But I know it's not that easy. So what you want to do is take stock of what you're doing now. Let's just say out of 3 target users, we are creating really, really good content that impresses them across these stages. And it might look like that in your business, or you might have every green dot filled in. The point here is what you want to think about is, are you creating content across the entire customer lifecycle? Meaning, oh wow, I could see in the middle row here, we have a lot of really good content, but we're not nurturing them. There must be some way we can nurture them and tell them a little bit more about our products and services, maybe share a little bit more about customer testimonials, so we can actually be really, really successful with it. There might be another customer segment where you're not even going after them at all at the top of the funnel, but you are serving them at the bottom of the funnel. So it could be possible that you have another customer segment as a result of these 2 customer segments that you are serving. So there might be a need for you to say, oh, you know what? Well, let's tell this customer story a bit more, and let's explain, a little bit more about what it is we do. Let's attract them with really good content, and let's also really focus on what their needs are at top of the funnel. So in the end, you might have a whole grid of all the green circles here. You might not. That's okay. I think it's important that you take one step at a time as you're building this out, so your content is very much considering the needs of your target users and the content that you create. And a lot of you are already doing this. I want to emphasize that you already are doing this because you already have most of your customer lifecycle stages built out. But sometimes some of you don't have your target users built out, and that's okay. So start working on that. When you enter into your 2014 planning, you want to think about how your content can engage people across the entire customer lifecycle. So I know I've been skipping ahead in the slide here for examples. We're going to go over a few quick examples. And again, just at this point, if you have questions, because this is basically the body of the content that for this webinar, go ahead and put them in. Mention at Infusionsoft or mention hashtag ISMastermind, and I will be sure to review them and answer them live here on the webinar. So last week, I was actually going grocery shopping, and a lot of people in this content marketing game, and a lot of people, in this content marketing sort of industry, basically, we don't think about the offline play. It's important that you think about the offline world as much as you do the online world. So if your business is rocking, where you're doing trade shows, you're doing events, you are meeting people on the street, maybe you have a food truck, you can absolutely create stellar content offline as much as you could do it online. And look at how this stands out. So I was in the supermarket, and don't worry, I didn't take all the recipes, so I'm not setting this up in any way. Literally, I walked by and I saw all these game day recipes, and you could see that half the box is empty. And what these game day recipes do, it helps consumers figure out what products to buy and what meals they can create so they can have an awesome football experience at home. And I think it was put out by Campbell's or one of the other major food makers. But think about what this does, right? No longer do I have to go online and find a recipe. I can just pick it up. I can peruse it. It's in the right place at the right time. I'm in a grocery store. And it is very, very effective. Now, personally, I'm not really that much into football, so don't really hold it too much against me. But the point here is that for the people who have big plans on game day, they know exactly what recipes they can create, and yeah, they can absolutely buy competitive products, and that's okay. You have to be okay with that. But the point is that they're being generous by giving you ideas and giving you intellectual stimulation beyond, hey, buy our product, here's a coupon. So I thought this was really innovative. And I think it's so valuable that you have to think about the offline world as much as the online world. Another example of this, if you're not in the food business, is maybe you are a real estate agent. And I know this actually came up, by the way, on our Facebook page. And I apologize. I'm going to paraphrase Gary Vaynerchuk here because I heard him speak on it the other day. But if you're a real estate agent, your content play is going to be around talking a lot about your area, talking about what restaurants are nearby, what shopping establishments are nearby, uh, crime trends in neighborhoods that you're selling to, the needs around first-time home buyers and what they have to do to get pre-qualified. All that stuff is educating your market so they develop trust with you and you are actually able to close that gap. So here's another example. So some of you might know Jennifer Bourne. She's actually one of our amazing Infusionsoft customers, and she runs a design firm. And basically, what she's done, she was able to be generous with her time, and she's created over 1,600 social media icons and provides it for free. Really, no opt-in is needed to get it. You just click a link and you can download it. And she provides all the social media icons so her audience can download them and put them on their website and customize them and make them look professional. So she does ask for a link in return. Not everyone does it because it doesn't always really fit in with their website. But the point is that she probably has spent many hours. I can't even fathom how long it takes to make all these icons. Maybe she has a secret, but the point is that she puts her time into providing design products out there for people to consume. And some of you might think, well, she's a designer. Doesn't just take away from her business? It doesn't, because she doesn't necessarily want to focus on creating social media icons all day, right? Her business is more branding and more creative strategy and doing high impact creative projects. So giving away social media icons is not taking away from her value as a business owner. And I know both Brian and Jennifer, and they're wonderful people. And I was actually talking with Jennifer last night on Twitter, and she was basically, I was asking her about the ROI of doing this. And she did this as an investment into her brand. And what she got out of it was hundreds of links, and she has a lot of visibility. She's gained trust in the design community, and a lot of people refer to her. And obviously, I asked the question here in a vague way, being respectful, but I was like, are you able to convert that traffic? Because having all the links and all the traffic is great. But in the end, you and I both know that it's all about conversion and sales if you want to make that a sustainable effort. And she basically said, yes, the traffic is converting and it works. And it was a lot of, it's very beneficial for her to make this play. So what I want you to think about, even if you're not a designer and you don't really know how to create social media icons, right? What I want you to think about is, what is it that you're actually really good at that you can just provide out there for free? And I think for her, she has no expectations. She's not expecting every person to put a backlink to her website or to sign up for her form. She's just putting it out there. And let's just say, hypothetically, out of 1,000 people who download this and use it, if 10, 20 people sign up for her business to learn more about branding and strategy, you can be sure that some of those will actually convert and will end up into a really, really lucrative client relationship. So, but I don't think that she's expecting that straight up. I definitely think that when you're creating content and you're playing the game here of developing a content strategy, you are making a strategic decision to put content out there that people use and they find valuable, right? Afterwards, and maybe as a later aspect of your content strategy, is how do you monetize some of your time and effort? And I think that's a lot where Infusionsoft does really well with the middle of funnel features that we provide. Another example, and I'll pull from our playbook that we used. So as you guys know, you might have already received an email or two from us, or three or four, where we're basically trying to engage people into our, what we call Thrive 365 movement. Basically, it's our belief that to help small businesses succeed, we want to give them the tools and the resources to do it. So we basically rolled up our sleeves. In a very short amount of time, we created a bunch of videos. We provided worksheets, which are basically nothing more than a Word doc and maybe a few Excel docs. And we put it all into context, into how can we help people attract more customers, how can we help them convert more, and how can we help them refer more customers. And we provided it into 3 what they call success kits or marketing kits, where people can they provide their information, and we're providing lots of value. As many of you know, Scott Martineau is wonderful in video, and he was basically able to break down these strategies that people can use and access. And all we needed was your name and email and phone number. And by doing that, we were able to, one, learn a lot more about our audience. Yes, we did generate lots of leads. But most importantly, it's the education. We made an investment in educating our audience because that is something we are really, really good at. So that's something that you can do. Maybe maybe you provide a product, but maybe you could create content that educates your audience about using that product really well. And not even so much the product, but the strategy around it. Let's say, hypothetically, we are Adobe Corporation and we sell Photoshop. It's not enough just to talk about Photoshop, but what is valuable is to talk about creative design and strategy. And that's actually where a company named lynda.com does really, really well. So what you want to do is leverage your interests and leverage your strengths as a business to help educate your audience and take them to that next level. And yes, while we did do this around driving leads, what we also did this for was to actually educate our audience and help them become more informed buyers. So whenever they do consider Infusionsoft, they are thinking about how to attract more customers. And so they can actually do the math on their conversion rates and be really, really excited and educated about it. And yes, we absolutely run the risk of people considering other solutions out there or doing it on their own. And that's fine. We know that. And it's just a matter of accepting that and having faith that your audience and the equity that you've built as a brand is going to be very, very receptive to your offers and your feedback. Mind you, in full disclosure, we did have a record sales month last month here. And it was shorter due to the Thanksgiving holiday. So just as a little bit of faith here that this works when you do it right and you're able to focus and create a great experience for people. So my last words here are basically just the whole point of this presentation. And I apologize if you wanted me to go a little bit more into the actual content strategy itself. I feel like I can answer a lot of your questions into that and give some more practical examples. But the whole point here, behind every piece of content that you create, every tweet that you create, every Facebook photo, every cover photo update, every Instagram, every Pinterest, you have to be intentional. You have to be focused. You have to adopt a mindset of being generous with information and be willing to sacrifice. Hey, we might not drive that many leads this month, but if we are generous with our information through the laws of reciprocity, people will pay it forward and they will support you and they will tell your friends about you and it will be amazing. You also need to be creative. I see a lot of formulaic content out there where people kind of, they are still marketing like it's 2006. And what worked well in 2006 is not going to work well today. And what you really need to do is be creative. You have to understand the platforms that people are using and creatively deliver your message in a way that resonates with them. Lastly, and sort of really connected to that, you have to adapt and you have to innovate. I think we know that Infusionsoft is really, really good at email, but we have a lot of integrations and a lot of other features that helps Infusionsoft innovate your business world, where you are able to creatively tailor the message to your audience, run very personalized, friendly, human marketing that really delivers your message in a clear and conscientious way. Additionally, innovation is key. And I think this is one of, and again, I apologize, I'm stealing some of this and borrowing it from Gary Vaynerchuk here. You have to innovate. I think innovation is key. And I think when I got into the game of content strategy and social media, right? There was a time when I was innovative and I was the cutting edge. But the reality is that over time, if you are complacent, you will not be cutting edge. You will be a commodity. So I think being innovative and trying new things and taking on calculated risks and delivering messages and content that your audience cares about, you will win. You will end up on top. So that's basically the summary here about when you are creating your content strategy, you have to really think about what is it your audience really cares about and how do they legitimately want to hear from you. I think absolutely there is plenty of room for making a sales offer or a lead generation offer. But the strategy that you want to think about is when do you do that? I don't think that every piece of content needs to necessarily have a high performing call to action that generates your list, right? I think that every piece of content needs to have intention around it. And I see some pieces of content that are published out there that don't really have any intention around it. They just are publishing content for the sake of content. And when you're doing that, your effectiveness decreases, consumers tune out, and then all of a sudden you're back to square one. So keep thinking about the end game. Think about the long game of what you're going after. Even despite your aggressive financial targets and your business targets in your business, it is so vital to think about the long game that you are playing here. So I hope that basically captures a lot of the feedback I had on content strategy and some of the differences between marketing. It is something that we do a lot of, and we're going to be doing a lot more of at Infusionsoft in the future here. We actually already have like a new content strategy that we're adopting and we're executing towards in 2014, and it's going to be really exciting. And I can't wait till maybe around Icon 14. I don't really have an issue with opening that up and sharing that with you and in full disclosure, so you can see exactly what we're doing and why, just so you can understand it. You can kind of borrow from it and implement it in your business. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and fire up Twitter here. Go ahead and include the hashtag ISMastermind and at Infusionsoft, or either or. And I will be looking for your questions here. While I'm doing that, let me go ahead and take a look at some of the questions that you might have already put into GoToMeeting and to see if there's a few quick ones here. All right, let's see. So some really good feedback is that some from Jerry, basically on Google Plus. It's important to really think about that all the platforms are changing, and you have to try them out. You have to give them a really fair shot to make it really successful. And Google Plus is adopting some of what makes Facebook amazing, and they're also changing the features and how people actually use that, in their business. So basically, another question about the Thrive 365 and the marketing kits. You can sign up. Once you sign up for it, just answer the questions. I think one's going to ask if you're a customer, and that's totally fine too, and it's open to everyone. Just go ahead and fill that out. You get access to all the kits no matter what. We actually released those one by one, where we released them sort of in different stages all throughout the month. So in the first couple weeks, you had access to Kit 1. The next week, you had access to Kit 2. And then the last week in November, you had access to Kit 3. And it was actually really, really valuable to provide that, because a lot of people get overwhelmed. And you have to make a decision to say, all right, what content are we going to provide that will give our audience some focus and some clarity, and deliver that to them. So really, really good questions here. So let me go ahead and look at Twitter. A lot of you have been really active, so thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. I know Scott Richens is missing the webinars. He really loves you guys. He loves it when you guys are active and you're sharing the tips and takeaways here. So I'm sure he's really thrilled with it. He is actually focused here the uh, on the Infusionsoft University, and I'm sure he's really thankful for everything you guys are doing here by letting me share some ideas here on the content. So let's go through a few of the questions here. Looking at the questions, give me a second. Actually, it looks like there's not that many questions here, which I think is great. A lot of you have been actually sharing really, really good takeaways from the webinar. So if you guys have any additional questions, feel free to ask us here. We're always very open and we are very generous with giving you feedback and clarity. But I think, again, for us here, what we want to do is definitely give you the opportunity to explore this here a bit on your own and try it out. I think content here, it's still very early. There's plenty of really good resources out there to really develop and nail the content needs of your audience. So awesome. There's actually a question here from Surf Goggles here. What do you think about, your question is publishing the same information across every social platform? I disagree with publishing one piece of content across every platform. I believe you need to be very intentional with crafting that message and delivering the information that is relevant to the audience. So while we might share a blog post on Twitter, we might actually share a more innovative discussion on Facebook. And maybe something a little different, or we do a hangout on Google. So that's a really good question. I think if you are going to be using more social platforms, you have to think about what is unique to that platform and delivering the information is relevant to your audience. So yeah, really, really good question. Thank you very much, Surf Goggles. And absolutely, that wraps up this webinar. I'm actually getting a notice here that my battery is really low. So we're going to go ahead and cut this a little short here. But I thank you, everyone, for making it to this webinar. And we'll go ahead and I'll look through all the mentions and tweets on Twitter here. And I will award one lucky person a copy of Gary Vaynerchuk's new book. My endorsement of it is that it gives you a lot of ideas. It gives you a lot of clarity into what's working and what's not when it comes to content strategy in your business, so you can make it really, really effective. So thank you guys so much. We're going to go ahead and conclude this for today. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend here. And don't forget, if you have any questions, go ahead and tweet us at Infusionsoft and include IS Mastermind. And if you have technical support questions, feel free to tweet Ask Infusionsoft, and our support team, led by Drew, actually, will be really, really helpful. And be sure to send him a thank you if he's helped you out. So thank you guys so much, and hope you have a great day.